The hospital room in Denver Medical Center was filled with the sound of my labored breathing as I lay dying from kidney failure, my 74-year-old body finally giving up after decades of carrying the weight of an unforgivable secret. My daughter Catherine was holding my hand, expecting some final words of love and wisdom, but instead I shocked her with the most devastating confession imaginable. Catherine, I need to tell you something before I die. That missing child case from 1975, the one they still talk about on the news every year, the little girl who disappeared from the park in Chicago. That was you. I took you. I kidnapped you from your real family. The heart monitor started racing as Catherine's face went completely white, but I had to finish confessing the truth that had been destroying me for 48 years. Before I continue my story, I really want to know where you're watching me from. Tell me in the comments what city you're watching from, and if you can, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. My name is Margaret Helen Foster, and I'm dying in room 318 at Denver Medical Center, finally admitting that I stole a child and built my entire life around that crime. 3 hours ago, my daughter Catherine still believed she was my biological child, born to me when I was 26 years old. She thought we had moved from Chicago to Denver when she was a baby because of my job opportunities. But the truth is, Catherine is actually Rebecca Marie Sullivan, and she was snatched from Lincoln Park in Chicago on July 15, 1975, when she was 3 years old. For 48 years, her real family, the Sullivans, have been searching for her, never giving up hope, never stopping their fight to find their missing daughter. It started in the summer of 1975 when I was living in Chicago, working as a secretary at a law firm and struggling with infertility after 3 miscarriages. My husband Robert and I had been trying to have children for 8 years, spending our life savings on treatments that never worked. Every month brought fresh disappointment, and I was becoming increasingly desperate and mentally unstable. Robert worked long hours as an insurance salesman, and I spent my evenings alone in our small apartment, obsessing over my inability to become a mother. I would walk past playgrounds and parks, watching other women with their children, feeling a jealousy so intense it was like physical pain. That's when I started noticing the Sullivan family during my lunch breaks at Lincoln Park. Patricia and Michael Sullivan would bring their 3-year-old daughter Rebecca to the park almost every weekday around noon. Rebecca was a beautiful little girl, with curly blonde hair and bright blue eyes, always wearing pretty dresses and laughing as she played on the swings and slides. I began timing my lunch breaks to coincide with their visits, sitting on a bench about 50 feet away and watching this perfect family that had everything I desperately wanted. Patricia Sullivan was young, maybe 24, and always looked so natural and happy with her daughter. She was pregnant with their second child and glowing with the kind of maternal joy I would never experience. For weeks, I convinced myself I was just enjoying watching children play, that it was harmless to observe this happy family from a distance. But the truth was, I was becoming obsessed with Rebecca Sullivan and fantasizing about what it would be like if she were my daughter instead. The kidnapping wasn't planned. It happened during a moment of pure desperation and opportunity that changed two families forever. On July 15, 1975, I was having the worst day of my life. That morning, I had received news from my doctor that my latest round of fertility treatments had failed again, and he recommended that Robert and I consider accepting that we might never have biological children. I was emotionally shattered and not thinking clearly when I walked to Lincoln Park for my lunch break. Patricia Sullivan was there with Rebecca, but something was different that day. Patricia looked tired and stressed, probably dealing with pregnancy discomfort and the challenges of chasing a toddler. She was sitting on a bench reading a book while Rebecca played nearby on the playground equipment. I watched from my usual spot as Rebecca wandered further and further from her mother, eventually walking toward the park's edge where the woods began. Patricia, absorbed in her book and probably assuming Rebecca was still on the playground, didn't notice her daughter's movement. That's when I saw my opportunity. Rebecca had toddled about 30 yards into the wooded area, probably chasing a butterfly or exploring like curious 3-year-olds do. She was completely out of sight from her mother's position and temporarily hidden from other park visitors. I don't remember making a conscious decision to approach her. One moment I was sitting on my bench, and the next moment I was walking toward the trees where Rebecca was crouched down, examining something on the ground. "Hi, sweetheart," I said softly, kneeling down beside her. "What did you find?" "Bug," Rebecca said proudly, pointing to a beetle crawling on a fallen leaf. "Pretty bug." She was so trusting, so innocent, showing me her discovery with the unguarded enthusiasm that only small children possess. In that moment, looking at her sweet face and hearing her little voice, something inside my brain snapped completely. "Would you like to see more bugs?" I asked. "I know where there are lots of pretty bugs." Rebecca nodded eagerly, and I picked her up. She didn't resist or cry. She just wrapped her little arms around my neck and babbled about bugs and butterflies as I carried her deeper into the woods, away from the park, away from her mother, away from her real life. My car was parked on the street adjacent to the wooded area, and within minutes, I had Rebecca secured in my back seat and was driving away from Lincoln Park. The entire kidnapping took less than 10 minutes, and no one saw us leave. Rebecca fell asleep in the car during the drive back to my apartment, exhausted from her park adventure and trusting that the nice lady who had promised to show her bugs was taking care of her. When Robert came home from work that evening, he found me sitting in our living room with a sleeping 3-year-old girl in my arms. "Margaret, whose child is this?" he asked, completely confused. "This is our daughter, Catherine," I said calmly, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. "I found her at an orphanage today. They said we could take her home immediately." Robert stared at me like I'd lost my mind, which I had. "Margaret, that's not how adoption works. There are procedures, paperwork, waiting periods. You can't just bring home a random child." "She's not random," I insisted. "She's ours. Look how perfectly she fits in my arms. This was meant to be." Robert tried to reason with me, but I had already constructed an elaborate delusion in my mind where Rebecca was legally and rightfully ours. When he threatened to call the police, I broke down completely and told him the truth about taking her from the park. "You kidnapped a child?" Robert whispered, his face going white with horror. "Margaret, we have to take her back immediately. Her parents must be going crazy looking for her." "No!" I screamed, clutching Rebecca tighter as she stirred in her sleep. "She's mine now. I'm her mother. Look how comfortable she is with me. This is where she belongs." That night was the longest of our marriage. Robert paced our apartment while I held Rebecca, both of us trying to figure out what to do next. By morning, Rebecca's disappearance was all over the Chicago news, and we realized the magnitude of what I had done. "Margaret, they're calling this the crime of the century," Robert said, showing me the newspaper headlines. "The FBI is involved. Her family is offering a $10,000 reward. You've destroyed these people's lives." But I was already too deep into my delusion to turn back. "She's better off with us," I insisted. "I can give her everything she needs. I love her more than anything." What I did next was even more calculated and evil than the original kidnapping. If this story is shocking you, hit that subscribe button because what I did to cover up this crime was even more systematic and heartless. Over the next few weeks, I convinced Robert that we had to relocate immediately to avoid getting caught. I told him that if we moved far enough away and changed Rebecca's name, We could start over as a family, and no one would ever find us. If we turn her in now, they'll put me in prison for the rest of my life, I told him. Rebecca will end up in foster care because her parents will never trust her with strangers again. At least with us, she'll have a loving home. Robert was terrified and conflicted, but he was also in love with me and didn't want to see me go to prison. Against his better judgment, he agreed to help me cover up the crime. We sold everything we owned and moved to Denver, Colorado, where Robert had a distant cousin who helped him get a job at a local insurance company. I dyed Rebecca's blonde hair brown and told everyone we met that she was our daughter Catherine, born in Chicago before we moved west. Rebecca, now Catherine, was too young to remember her life before the kidnapping clearly. 3-year-olds have limited long-term memory, and within months, she had adapted to her new life and accepted Robert and me as her parents. But she did have fragments of memories that she would mention occasionally, and I had to work constantly to convince her that these were just dreams or imagination. I remember a lady with yellow hair who used to sing to me. Catherine would say sometimes, "That was just a dream, sweetheart," I would tell her. "You've always lived with Daddy and me." I remember a big dog named Rusty. "You must have seen that dog on television, honey. We've never had any pets." For years, I systematically erased Rebecca Sullivan's memories and replaced them with a false history as Catherine Foster. Every time she mentioned something from her real life, I convinced her it was fantasy or confusion. The most heartbreaking part was watching the annual news coverage of Rebecca Sullivan's disappearance. Every July 15th, the Chicago media would run stories about the missing child, interviewing her parents and updating the public on the ongoing investigation. Patricia and Michael Sullivan never gave up hope. They appeared on television year after year, begging anyone with information to come forward. They aged visibly over the decades, but their love for their missing daughter never faded. Rebecca would be 35 years old now, Patricia Sullivan said during a 2007 interview that I watched in secret. "I still set a place for her at our dinner table every night. I still buy her birthday presents and Christmas gifts. A mother never stops hoping." Michael Sullivan had become a victims' rights advocate, working with other families of missing children and lobbying for better FBI resources for cold cases. "Not knowing what happened to Rebecca is torture," he said, "but I'd rather die hoping than give up looking for my daughter." Watching these interviews while sitting next to Catherine, who had no idea she was looking at her real parents on television, was psychological torture. But I was too deep into the lie to confess, and too afraid of losing Catherine to tell the truth. Catherine grew up to be a wonderful woman, intelligent, kind, successful in her career as a nurse. She married a good man named David and had 2 children of her own. Throughout her adult life, she would occasionally mention feeling like something was missing, like she had lost something important that she couldn't quite remember. "Mom, do you ever feel like there are pieces of your childhood that you can't access?" She asked me once when her own children were small. "I have these weird feelings sometimes, like déjà vu but stronger, like I'm remembering something that never happened." "Everyone has strange feelings sometimes, honey," I deflected. "Memory is complicated, especially from when you're very young." But Catherine's intuition was picking up on the truth her conscious mind couldn't access. Part of her always knew that something about her early life didn't add up. The guilt and stress of maintaining this massive lie for 48 years slowly destroyed my health and my marriage. Robert and I divorced when Catherine was 15, partly because he could no longer live with the weight of what we had done. He moved to another state and eventually remarried, but he never told anyone about our terrible secret. I developed chronic anxiety, depression, and a host of stress-related health problems that doctors couldn't fully explain. I was living in constant fear of being discovered, constantly watching the news for updates on Rebecca Sullivan's case, constantly lying to my own daughter about her identity and history. When my kidney disease was diagnosed 6 months ago, I knew I was dying and would finally have to choose between taking this secret to my grave or destroying Catherine's life by telling her the truth. "Catherine," I said yesterday, gripping her hand as my breathing became more labored, "I need to tell you who you really are, and I need you to help me fix what I broke 48 years ago." "What do you mean, Mom? You're scaring me." "Your real name is Rebecca Marie Sullivan. You were born on March 3rd, 1972, in Chicago. Your real parents are Patricia and Michael Sullivan, and they've been looking for you for 48 years. The silence that followed was deafening. I watched Catherine's face cycle through confusion, disbelief, horror, and finally a strange kind of relief as pieces of her lifelong identity puzzle finally started clicking into place. "You're telling me I'm adopted?" she whispered. "No, sweetheart. I'm telling you that I kidnapped you from a park when you were 3 years old, and I've been lying to you about your identity your entire life." Catherine stood up abruptly and walked to the window, staring out at the Denver skyline while processing the most devastating news any person could receive. After 10 minutes of silence, she turned back to me with tears streaming down her face. "My whole life is a lie? Your life isn't a lie, Catherine. You're real. Your achievements are real. Your family is real. But your origin story, that was stolen from you, and I'm the one who stole it. Are my real parents still alive? Yes, they're 71 and 73 years old now, and they never stopped looking for you. They have a website, a Facebook page. They work with missing children organizations. They've dedicated their lives to finding you." Catherine was quiet for a long time, and I could see her mind working through the implications of what I had told her. "I have to contact them," she said finally. "I have to let them know I'm alive. I know, that's what I want too. I can't die knowing that I left those people wondering what happened to their daughter for the rest of their lives." That night, Catherine spent hours researching the Sullivan family online. She found decades of interviews, photos, and appeals for information about their missing daughter. She saw pictures of herself as a 3-year-old that she had never seen before. She read about her real family's history, her extended relatives, the life she would have had if I hadn't destroyed it. The next morning, Catherine made the phone call that would change everything. "Mrs. Sullivan, my name is Catherine Foster, but I think I might be your daughter, Rebecca." What followed was the most emotional conversation anyone could imagine. Patricia Sullivan, now 71 years old, had received thousands of false leads over the years from well-meaning people who thought they had found Rebecca. But something about Catherine's voice, her description of the fragments of memories she had always carried, convinced Patricia that this was really her missing daughter. "Rebecca, is it really you, baby?" "I think so. I have memories of a woman with yellow hair who used to sing to me, and a dog named Rusty, and someone used to call me Becca." Patricia started sobbing on the phone. "That was me. I used to sing you, 'You Are My Sunshine,' every night before bed, and Rusty was our golden retriever, and yes, we called you Becca." Within hours, Michael Sullivan was on a plane to Denver. Within days, DNA tests had confirmed what everyone's hearts already knew. Catherine Foster was Rebecca Sullivan, and she was finally coming home after 48 years. The reunion was covered by national media as one of the most remarkable missing person cases ever resolved. After nearly half a century, the Sullivan family was whole again. But the story wasn't entirely happy. The revelation that Catherine had been kidnapped and raised under a false identity was traumatic for everyone involved. She had to reconcile her love for me, the woman who had raised her with genuine affection despite the circumstances, with the knowledge that I had committed an unforgivable crime against her and her real family. Margaret Helen Foster died at 6:22 a.m. on a Thursday morning, 3 days after confessing her crime and reuniting Catherine with her real family. Her last words were an apology to the Sullivan family, delivered through Catherine. "Tell them I'm sorry. Tell them I loved her like she was my own, but that doesn't excuse what I did." The legal implications of the case were complex since I had died before I could be prosecuted, but the FBI officially closed the Rebecca Sullivan missing person case and removed her from the National Missing and Unidentified Persons database. At my funeral, both the Foster family, who had known me as Catherine's mother, and members of the Sullivan family who were reclaiming their daughter attended. The service was a strange mixture of grief for my death and joy for Rebecca's return. Catherine, now using both names, Rebecca Catherine Sullivan Foster, gave a eulogy that captured the complexity of the situation. "Margaret Foster kidnapped me and built my entire life on a lie. What she did was unforgivable and caused immeasurable pain to my real family, but she also raised me with love, supported my dreams, and shaped me into the person I am today. I can hold both truths at the same time, that she committed a terrible crime and that she loved me genuinely. I'm grateful to finally know who I really am and to be reunited with my biological family. But I'm also grateful for the life I had, even though it was built on deception. Margaret taught me to be strong, independent, and compassionate, even if she couldn't teach me honesty." The reunion with the Sullivan family was beautiful but complicated. Rebecca had missed 48 years of family history, traditions, and relationships. She had to learn about grandparents who had died hoping to see her again, about siblings who had been born after her disappearance, about a family culture and dynamic that she had no memory of. But the Sullivans embraced her completely, understanding that she was both their long-lost daughter Rebecca and the woman Catherine who had been shaped by her experiences. They worked with family therapists to rebuild relationships and create new traditions that honored both her past and her present. Today, Rebecca Catherine continues to work as a nurse while building relationships with her rediscovered family. Her children, my grandchildren, now have a second set of grandparents who love them deeply and are grateful for every moment they get to spend with the family they thought they had lost forever. The case led to improvements in missing children databases and protocols, ensuring that other families wouldn't have to wait 48 years for answers about their missing loved ones. Share this story if it moved you, because sometimes the truth takes decades to surface, but love and family bonds can survive even the most devastating deceptions when people choose forgiveness over revenge. Truth and healing win, always.